Bandwidth provided by Recursive Squirrel Interactive. Visit them on the web at recursivesquirrel.com. Episode 655, Sound Effects Gone Wild. November 22nd, 2021. It's time for this week's edition of the BeanCast, a weekly discussion about the news and issues facing marketers today. I'm your host, Bob Norton. Thanks for joining us. For years, Apple has steadfastly maintained customers would void their warranties if they repaired their own devices. So it was somewhat surprising that this past week the company reversed this position. How will it impact brand perception? Tonight we'll discuss. Also, why Singles Day is our future, whether virtual worlds will lead to more tribalism, big changes coming to iMessage, plus this week's Fair, Fail, Foul. That's the lineup. Let's meet tonight's panel. Thanks for joining us for this week's BeanCast. I'm Bob Norp, and with me on the panel for this evening, we start with the communications leader at Owens Corning, Mr. Christopher Barger. Christopher, how are you?
I'm doing great, Bob. How are you? Happy Thanksgiving week.
Happy Thanksgiving to you as well, in the U.S. Those in Canada have already done this, so. And speaking of Canada, also with us, we have the founder and president of the 6 Pixel Group, Mr. Mitch Joel. Hi, Mitch.
Hey, Bob, I was just looking for a sound effect of a turkey, but I'll just use my voice.
I'm sure someone could give us a sound effect of a turkey. Let me listen. Listening.
Crickets? No, it's not a turkey.
The one sound effect that Scott Monty does not have. Finally, we welcome back the founder and principal of Scott Monty Strategies, Mr. Scott Monty. Hi, Scott.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here representing the other white meat.
Oh,
Well, let's jump right into the topics. The news was just overwhelmed with this first story, reversing a long-standing policy that voided warranties if you repaired your own devices. Apple is now relenting and has created repair kits and is giving you the freedom to repair your own device whenever you want. I'm gathering if you use original Apple parts from these kits that they've provided. I'm not sure if they're going to void the warranty for other types of repairs. I'm not that in-depth on this yet. But Mitch, what's your thoughts here? What will be the impact throughout the tech space and beyond? Is this going to impact a lot of other companies like John Deere and other areas of the business where people have always had this do not repair policy? Or is this something that's exclusively to Apple? And what does it mean for Apple and its consumers?
Bob, this would have never happened under Johnny Ive's watch. Never, I tell you.
No, it wouldn't.
Yeah, the right to repair movement has been something that's no joke, and there's been government talk for quite some time about what Apple can do, and if they are going to allow this. This was really seen as a serious thing. I mean, we can sort of joke about it and know that there's not a mall with that doesn't have a kiosk stand that wouldn't crack that bad boy open for you if you really wanted to. But the truth is that when you do, that would void the warranty. And if you thought dongle hell was bad, try having somebody open up the iPhone not from an Apple dealer. And again, a big problem when suddenly your warranty is null and void. So, look, I think it's ultimately this is to me less about control and more about what seems to be an emerging category within Apple around customer service that also leads to just services in general. If you look at the tenure of Tim Cook over the past 10 years since Steve Jobs has passed, the numbers are astronomical in terms of both market capitalization and in terms of overall revenue. We're talking like triple digits across the board. I think market capitalization has gone up actually over 600%, if I'm not mistaken. And a lot of that is driven, we're talking billions of dollars, accounting for about only 20% of the company, is around services. And this pressure of right to repair and this government pending regulation where they're setting with regulators, it's not really surprising because it really is aligned with them moving towards more and more services. And I'm going to guess also that there's another mitigating factor here, which happens to be this global pandemic that we always come back to. I believe there's probably downward pressure in terms of staffing issues at the stores. I think that we have a global lumpy recovery. It's going to be a long one. Perhaps they were looking at issues in terms of wait times, in terms of just supply chain and getting the parts and pieces to everywhere they needed to be. So again, if you couple those two ideas of them offering more services with the reality of the new world, perhaps what we're seeing is something really powerful. Does this ultimately help the brand? I mean, look, Apple Care was a big deal. The Genius Bar was a big deal, and perhaps moving it further down the food chain is just actually a way to really connect the dots for them. And I love the model of adding in more third-party service providers as well. So not just individuals, but third-party service providers. That's like a really interesting space to be. They're almost moving into the CrossFit model, where if you want to open up a box, you go for a certification. There's revenue on the back end of that. You're training the trainers, essentially, is what's happening. And again, if you think about all the moving parts, pardon the pun, and what's happening, it feels like it is a smart time for them to do this, but I'm sure it was done begrudgingly.
I don't think there's any question of that. I'm very aware of the shareholder resolution from Green Century asking them to reevaluate, and the fact that pressure has been coming on them. I question whether it's coincidence that resolution was coming to a head just as Apple made this announcement. I'd like to believe that it's a move toward customers, but I don't find it coincidental that the shareholder resolution is also at play here.
You know what? I'm with you guys for the most part. I mean, there is some serendipity here that can't be just coincidence. I mean, the fact that suddenly, there's all this pressure on them, and suddenly they come out and say they're going to allow the right to repair. I mean, you've got the green side, like what Christopher was saying. I mean, making things more sustainable, making products last longer. They got that pressure. They got the regulation, which Mitch talked about. But it does surprise me a little bit that they put so much focus on these repair kits. And it makes me wonder, is it really letting go of the control over repair if you just say you have to use these repair kits that we provide to you, and you can repair it if you want, but you have to use our parts? It doesn't allow for anybody else to come in and put third-party parts. And there are a lot of good third-party Mac parts. There's a lot of good third-party iPhone parts. There's a lot of crap out there as well, but there are some good certified products. And it makes me wonder, Scott, is this really them letting control, or is it their version of letting go of control where they still maintain a firm grip over the consumer?
Yeah, I don't think you'll ever see Apple let complete control go. I think you've got three benefits here, and Mitch identified a number of them. One, it releases the logjam that we've seen on Apple Care and on Genius Bars, and when you have to actually take your device in or send your device in for Apple to repair. Number two, it has that definite revenue opportunity on the back end for certification, which I think is brilliant. To become an Apple certified repair shop, this is one way around it. The other thing, too, is, and this is the third one, if people decide to purchase these repair kits themselves and make a go at it and are ham-handed in their repair attempts, what does that mean for Apple? Oh, by the way, you're going to be buying a new device. So that actually helps revenue in the long term as well.
That's a really interesting point.
I think the trick is...
Go ahead, Mitch.
I think the trick really here, though, is for them to figure out if and when this is really creating another dongle hell scenario where customers get frustrated with trying to do this themselves or have, create more damage and more problems. But I do think that the greater vision is probably somewhere around that idea of killing the bottleneck, because the bottleneck is real. I mean, it used to be you would go down to the store and, one of your keys is flopped off your keyboard and they would just run in the back and snap it back on for you. And now you always have to leave stuff there. There's just this bottleneck. And then because, again, COVID and restrictions, and depending on where you are geographically, the waits are getting, maybe a bit out of control. And so, look, can we look at it and go, well, there's shareholder letters and green? I think all of it is a part of it. And at the end of the day, it's going to be really hard for Apple to claim that they're green or really, focusing on that when there are certain aspects of it that are abundantly obvious that they're not. So yes, sometimes it takes these shareholder components to blossom. But I don't know, in our grander world, we're communication nerds and marketing nerds here, that anybody, I don't even know if I would have really heard about it or cared about it if there wasn't even just a smidgen of media attention. And in a world of Apple, this didn't really get that much heat either in the news.
Which makes me wonder how much of a problem this really is for Apple or consumers.
Who the hell's doing this?
Yeah, there's very few. I would do it. I totally would do it. I take apart my computer all the time. I make all kinds of adjustments and repairs to it. I mean, I've been doing that for years. But I know I'm an oddity. Nobody does this. Everybody, when their Mac breaks, they go to the Genius Bar.
Mitch is too busy out repairing his John Deere. To deal with this.
Not all Canadians are farmers. Tools, But really, think about it. It can't be much of a problem. This has got to be more of a branding effort on their parts. This is a PR move, right? Christopher.
What it feels like. Yeah.
Yeah, Christopher and Scott, you guys are the PR nerds. Tell me. It's just like this feels like it's a PR move purely to put them in the good light of regulators, good light of consumers. And even though most people are still going to take their stuff to the Genius Bar and get it repaired by an Apple certified technician, right?
Well, yes and no. Obviously, this was a business decision that was made along the way. Not a huge one, not a groundbreaking one, not one that a lot of people will care about. But the fact that you can milk it for media attention, for putting the power in people's hands, it plays really well. But ultimately, they made this decision for very concrete purposes, not just for the PR.
Would you concur?
Really, I'm not sure that Apple needed. There are not a whole lot of people flying away from Apple and leaving Apple because they can't repair their own phones. It's in response, I think, to the regulation issues and the shareholder resolutions, but I don't look at it as a PR issue or a PR move because this was not a PR threat for them.
Well, it's an interesting story and one they're going to keep an eye on because for my sake, I was really excited about this. The fact that I can go to Apple and finally get that hard drive or get that other device that I need to put in my computer and I don't have to do anything. I don't have to leave my computer there and get all my data off and everything else. That's just tremendous for me. So I was on top of this story, but oh well, it's just another of the Apple's many moves. We'll just have to get back to it when we find out more information. We're going to move on in just a couple minutes and talk about Singles Day. Singles Day has become the world's biggest shopping event, and it's kind of on the horizon that a lot of people are looking at it and saying, maybe it's going to come to these shores. Maybe it's going to be part of our world. We'll get to that in just a minute. But first, I want to talk about our sponsor for this evening, Feedback Loop. Now, if you're a product manager, an innovator, a startup guy, whatever, any of those categories apply here. You know how hard it's going to be sure your next big idea will be a hit. In fact, 85% of new products fail. And a huge reason for all that failure is that it's just too hard to validate product market fit with consumers. Old-style market research is way too slow, way too complicated, and way too expensive for fast-moving teams trying to build something great. But what if you could test out your product ideas with targeted consumers whenever you want, before you put all the time and money into development? That's what startups and Fortune 500 companies do with Feedback Loop. They get quality feedback from their target customers early and often. Feedback Loop is the test before you invest product research platform. It's got expert templates for concept testing, user discovery, prioritizing features on your roadmap, and a whole lot more. You can create your own test in minutes and get back quality insights from your target consumers within hours. And here's the best part. Now listen to this. If you let me try to get this website right. If you go to go.feedbackloop.com/BeanCast, that's go.feedbackloop.com/BeanCast, you're going to get 3 full tests for free. That means you can try before you buy and find out whether or not it can help your company. Now, if you want your next product or feature to be a huge hit within the marketplace, test before you invest, build based on data, not opinion, and launch with confidence with Feedback Loop. And we thank them very much for their support of our program. Well, another 11/11 or Singles Day has passed, and the world's biggest shopping day has once again become a huge success. And yet, in the West, most consumers know nothing about this shopping holiday outside of us marketing nerds here on shows like this. But the question is, should we? Mitch, will we ever see Singles Day come to the U.S. and Canada in your case? Will we see Singles Day become a phenomenon like it is in Asia? Or is this something that is just not destined for our shores? What do you think?
Conspicuous consumption is alive and well, everyone. Give cheer. I mean, look, the Alibaba chaos of this year, it's incredible to see what's happening with them. I mean, you're close to a $3 billion fine from the Chinese government for anti-competitive practices. Wink, wink, nod, nod. You see this company generate, $85 billion in 11 days, and you look to our world and go, why? Why isn't this here? But the truth is we have a couple things happening. One is, Black Friday, Cyber Monday are real. Cyber Monday is still somewhat fresh and new in our world. It keeps getting extended more and more. I've been seeing Black Friday sales start running, weeks in advance. Sometimes it's Black Friday month in many parts of the world. Also, we have to remember that Singles Day really was an Alibaba corporate branded event, much in the same way we also have, if you really want to go into Amazon Prime Day. So do we have it? Well, it's kind of hard to have if you're not seeing big heat on Alibaba in terms of North American e-commerce. Do we have Singles Day? I think we do. I think we have it in places like a Black Friday, in places like Cyber Monday, in places like Amazon Prime. So do we need it specifically? It's hard to know. I mean, if we wanted to go down a bit of a rabbit hole, we could even start questioning what is a sale really anymore when we're seeing variable pricing and personalized pricing based off of our browsing history and Amazon usage. We're seeing these digitized pricing models that fluctuate very much like a stock market. What I paid for something on Amazon today is probably very different than what any of us have paid depending on what region you're in, what you've searched, and the type of consumer you are. So to me, this idea of will it ever hit here? I don't think it's a question of will Singles Day hit here so much as will Alibaba really have a stance here. And if they do, then they can bring along whatever offers they have for people.
That's a really good point. I mean, Alibaba was behind Singles Day, and just like Amazon Prime Day is a uniquely targeted to the markets that Amazon serves, Alibaba has created its own juggernaut. I'm not really sure who came first. Does anybody know? Scott, do you know anything about the history of
Singles Day began in 1991, and it was originally only limited to male students in China. And it eventually took hold, obviously, as the internet grew across China, and as Alibaba became a powerful entity, they adapted it for their own mechanisms, almost like a modern day Hallmark, if you will. And it was the anti-Valentine's Day holiday. So in some ways, it was a finger in the eye to all the people that were celebrating love. Look, when you think about it, every day here in the United States and Canada is Singles Day. I mean, we don't wait for a special day to treat ourselves. Conspicuous consumption, as Mitch said, is alive and well. And when you look at the performance of Amazon Prime Day, which was $11 billion in revenue in the U.S. this year, and you look at the 5-day period over Black Friday and Cyber Monday from last year, I think they raked in $34 billion. When you do that as a percentage of the population, we're actually doing better with holidays than Alibaba did in China with Singles Day, with $85 billion on a 1.4 billion population for China.
Another good point. I mean, they've got way more people and the percentages don't add up. I mean, it makes sense that, we don't need a Singles Day. But it is interesting to me, Christopher, when we look at the way that China has continued to expand around the globe and invest in projects in different localities around the globe. They bring along their culture, they bring along their habits, they bring along their traditions, and they bring along Singles Day. And I'm just wondering, whether or not that can be a factor here in the spread of Singles Day as being the shopping day of the year, especially considering that it happens during the midst of our Black Friday frenzy anyway. I mean, can you see us adopting it, or is it too much of a jingoistic thing in terms of the way that we look at ourselves and say, well, we can't adopt this because it's from China? And it's just like just saying, I mean, the way Americans are American. I mean, you know, will we ever be able to adopt it?
Yeah, really.
What's the Canadian version of American?
American. Well, you know, what's interesting about it is also I wonder how many people listening actually know what Alibaba is. They probably think it's just Amazon when it's really not. It's more of the marketplace, and it's individualized merchants who work through Alibaba as their platform to handle all the commerce side of it. It's more like Shopify actually than it probably is like Amazon. So I don't know if it's really a function of that happening, Bob, so much as those merchants really feeling that there's a market for their products here in North America.
Is that a fair way to position it, that it's more like Shopify? Because it seems to me it's more like a drop ship.
Kind of a bit of both, I guess.
It's more of a drop ship type operation, you know, where you as a company can set up a drop ship operation with arrangement with Alibaba, and you as a consumer can work with things and you set up your own little storefronts, but it's still like more like drop ship type operations.
Yeah, I guess if you didn't have like your own unique URL and you just used something called like Shopify.com place to sell, that would be probably more like it. But it's not, Alibaba in and of itself is not a retailer really, right? So we have to also think about it that you have a brand that would have to establish itself and then have all of these third-party merchants want to actively sell and be a part of the North American market. It would have to then build itself to a bulky where there would be, you know, an opportunistic moment to do something like a Singles Day. It just feels very far away based off of how many years Alibaba has been around, how they've tried to enter both into more of the English market or North American market, and it just doesn't seem to stick. I mean, I think the greatest push they've had, and that wasn't them, it's just Wish. I mean, maybe Wish is the closest we've had come in North America to seeing something like it.
There's something about Singles Day that also bothers me, and I'm going to go to you next, Christopher, on this one. You know, because Singles Day, as Scott said, came about because of it was originally targeted at males within China. And the reason for that is because of the one-child policy, and everybody wanted a boy. So they have a glut of boys and they have no girls. And it's just like, and you know, you have guys who can't get girls because there are no women around to date or to have relationships with. And so you just sit around and you play video games and you buy stuff. And it seems like that's the real driver of Singles Day in China. That's why it's so successful, is because it's ultra targeted toward a specific consumer that, Christopher, that consumer does not exist in the United States. Incel, you know, community aside, I mean, it really does not exist in the States. So how can...
I don't know, man. When was the last time you looked at the audience in a Trump rally?
Yeah, but still 50% of the population of the U.S. is still, well, over 50% is women. So you don't have that targeted consumer base like you do in China. So could a Singles Day ever take off in any kind of way, shape, or form, because Singles Day is such a uniquely Chinese vision?
It is. I don't think it's ever going to take off in North America. You know, you were positioning earlier and saying that, you know, as the Chinese invest elsewhere in the world, they bring a lot of their culture and traditions with them. And so if the question is Singles Day going to be embraced elsewhere in the world at a much greater clip? Probably, yes, because of those factors. In the United States and Canada and North America here, I don't think so. Number one, it's too close to the Black Friday season, and Mitch and Scott have both talked about how we don't really need yet another shopping day because we've got every day as shopping day. I think there is a little bit of resistance to Chinese technology, Chinese traditions. If there weren't, if we were all just buying into a thing that was backed by the Chinese government and Chinese culture, we'd all be on Huawei right now. True. But there's a third reason that I think, you know, this may be a little naive of me to suggest, but, you know, we just came off of COP26. Climate change will continue to be in the news every time there's a weather event that is worse than they have been in the past or is more frequent than they have in the past. Mitch started off this conversation talking about conspicuous consumption being real, and we kind of all laughed about it. I'm wondering if there is going to be, certainly not with Black Friday or Cyber Monday, because they're close enough to Christmas where we can kind of tie into that, but the imposition of another consumption day, wherever it came from. I'm wondering if society is prepared to, at this point, maybe say all this consumption's not such a good idea. We shouldn't be embracing yet another shopping day. We should be kind of moving away from this whole conspicuous consumption thing, especially generations that are, 10, 15 years younger than the folks on this call. So I'm wondering if there's room in the mindset for another shopping holiday like this.
Do you think we're really, well, yeah, I mean, I'm with Scott on the emphatic yes. We just went through a global pandemic where it looked like people might lose their livelihoods and everything that they've saved up for, and all they did was spend and went crazier and just look at the market. And then the net result of that is now this incredibly complex supply chain issue that we're seeing. And what do you see at the end of this, Chris? We're seeing interest rates go skyrocket. You speak to any smart economist, which is anybody smart, anybody who's not me, basically, and they would tell you that interest is a function of our imagination, essentially, right? If you believe it to be true, it's true. If everybody believes there's not enough cars in the world, suddenly you can't buy a car, and suddenly you can't even get a secondhand car. If everybody believes that they better do all their shopping right now because there's going to be no presents and toys for the kids, they're going to go out and clean the shelves, which is exactly what's happening. So there is no indication that anybody took a step back during this and thought, I stayed home for a couple months, and what did I actually really need? I don't really need that much. No, they are happy to spend that green, my friend. They are happy.
They are now, but when the supply chain issues ease, when there's not this hoarding mentality of, like you said, there's not any of this, so I better go get some. When we have a return to a little bit normal of a supply situation, I'm not sure that the behaviors are going to completely revert to what they were.
But in a complete
you're
panic,
probably right, and I'm probably
in a complete panic where people thought they could lose their livelihoods, didn't slow down. I mean, that would probably be my key leading indicator on this one.
Well, there's also this fact that I heard on the Howard Stern show, which really kind of resonated with me, which is the fact that Greta Thunberg has 2 million followers on Instagram, while Khloe Kardashian has 54 million. It's kind of like you look at every indicator everywhere in the social sphere, and there's more attention and interest given to consumerism than there is toward, any kind of social good. It's off the charts how much the population has gone toward the consumer side of the equation. So I think we could absorb.
I think.
Go ahead.
If I can, I think that's why we're going to see these two interests, sensibilities of human nature merge, and particularly, as Christopher mentioned, the generation that's maybe 10, 15 years younger than us, as we see more move toward the digital space. That's why, mark my prediction here, the next big Singles Day is going to happen in the metaverse.
You just did a great segue.
What a segue.
You gave me a total segue. Well, that's a great way to go into the next topic. There's been lots of criticism of the whole Meta mission, meaning Meta, the new name for the Facebook corporation. But some people are now saying a metaverse will only fracture society more, which I kind of feel is maybe going a little too far. I can understand most of the criticism of Meta. I'm not really on board with the fact that it's going to fracture society. But Christopher, do you think it's true in spite of what I just said, or will the exact opposite occur? And will it be actually a bridge builder and put people in community with each other who weren't in community before? What do you think about it? And I'm not just talking about Meta itself, but I'm talking about everybody playing in the metaverse space right now.
Yeah. Let's set aside the question of whether Mark Zuckerberg is the person we want delivering an alternate reality for a moment. I remember a time, Bob, back in the days, when there were only 2 pixels of separation, and we were all excited about what technology was making possible. We were going to have democratized information, fewer gatekeepers, the opening of channels between brands and customers. Humanity was going to be smarter and society was going to be better because we all had access to the ability to create information and share it on social media. That didn't work out real well for society. Unfortunately, we had all these visions of what the technology could do, and maybe we didn't have enough of an eye on how society would respond.
If you don't,
how the technology industry would respond.
Can I hop in? I don't fully agree with that. I really just don't. I think technology is somewhat ambiguous, and for anybody who wants to talk about, how look, social media ended democracy or is going to blow up the world. For every case study against that, I can show you a case study where an entrepreneur or a business was built, great information was created, a genesis of voices of real journalists or real creators of content have really captured the imagination and moved us away with new revenue models. It's a good trope, and I get it that, the social media didn't really work out for us, but that's like saying, the phone didn't really work out for us or electricity didn't really work out for us. I just don't buy into it. I really don't. For every, I'm not saying I'm not trying to be Pollyannic or altruistic or any form of tech apologist, but the truth of the matter is that for every bad part of it, there's been some great part of it. And when we're looking at the media, just remember who has the most to benefit from these platforms failing. It's them. That's where the revenue goes when they fail. It goes back to these other media outlets. So I do look at it a bit more, with a skeptical eye, especially with, it really easy to poke the giants, but look at really the creators underneath it and the type of content we're getting. Just even think about BeanCast, not to blow smoke over to Bob. He doesn't need it. He's got plenty of it on his own. But where in the world could you?
I live in Michigan. Smoking like is free.
What's that, Bob?
I live in Michigan. Smoking is allowed.
Exactly. Where in our world, guys? I mean, how would the four of us have met and become actual friends were it not for social media? Where in the world would you be able to get an hour every week of content if you're in the advertising or marketing business like this? And this has led to other people creating content. So again,
Mitch,
we can talk about meta.
Let me counter Mitch first here for a second. I agree with you in large part. Social media has been a blessing for a lot of things in our society. I mean, and your point about us being friends is entirely correct. I mean, we wouldn't have been friends if we hadn't have had that social connection. But there's no doubt that social media as a platform has become tribalized because it self-segregates. So you put up your walls, you get into your community, and then you put on blinders and you ignore everybody else. And that's the problem. Not a lot of people are looking at news through a lot of different lenses. They're looking at it through the same lens. And that can be problematic. And that's why I'm positioning, the metaverse, the people saying that this is going to fracture society even more. I think that's maybe an overstep, because I think the problem with social media is it allows you to build these little rooms as opposed to a metaverse where it encourages you to explore an entire environment, and then you get to see other people. I mean, unless they put up whitenationalist.com.
I would think there's something different going on here. I'll give my own 4 cents on this. I'm Canadian, not 5. I think anytime you are behind something and not in our protein or physical form, it loses something, and at the same time gives us this strange feeling that we can get away with something. And, I really felt it come through, not just thinking about this conversation, but I've been back on the road speaking at events, and here I am traveling 12 hours and 24 hours to speak for 45 minutes. And it's easy to get back on the plane and go, that could have been on Zoom. But then you realize many things. People are social by nature. We connect to one another in very different ways when we're in front of each other, which is a real thing. Pico Iyer, who is just a brilliant writer and focuses on travel, he says, we don't travel to move, we travel to be moved. When we see each other, we understand each other better. We can be around different people. We are exposed to different cultures, different genders, different types of people from different walks of life who speak different languages or have different experiences. So to me, it's more about that. Digital has always removed that. So this comparison between meta and web as being a continuation of a problem, this more insular, this more filter bubble based problem, really isn't a tech. It's more of a technology versus human thing, and that the problem with the metaverse is absolutely true. What we're talking about, that we will be more insular, it will fracture society more if we don't get out there, and that to me was a big realization this week. I went back out there. I realized that even if I don't agree with some of these cultures or behaviors or regulations or rules, especially in the world I live in up here in Canada, which is very different than that of the US, who am I really? And it would be really easy to sit in the metaverse or in a Facebook group or on LinkedIn and talk about it and throw it out there. So I just don't like the comparison of it to a continuation of web versus the real issue is we have to bring all of that together and talk about more what it means to do this type of thing. Speak in real voices to real people and experience this differing of opinions, because that's what's going to make places like Meta and the web as we know it better. If we can get beyond the keyboard or beyond the goggles and into the real stuff.
You see, Christopher, this is how you hijack a topic. This is how you hijack a topic from somebody. We just go after you. And
you know what? That's all right. Look, if I'm going to get shot at, there's no one I'd rather be shot at than Mitch, man.
You sweet talker, you.
Well, I love listening to the two of you guys debate this because it's like metaverse versus Metamucil.
Oh wait, I'm the older one here. Am I Metamucil?
Do we believe that the metaverse will be different from the web? I don't believe it will be. Do we believe that we have learned something from our misgivings of this, and as we enter into this new platform, we should improve ourselves? I do not believe we will. Will the metaverse build new creators, new businesses, new valuations, new models? Absolutely. And so again, we're getting back to this idea of what the risk and reward is going to be as this gets deployed. But I'm with you, Chris, in that I do not believe any private corporation should be the governing rule of what is either free speech or freedom of speech, or which voices get amplified and which voices don't get amplified. That to me remains the problem, and always will be the problem.
Well, Mitch, you are more optimistic or less misanthropic than me, I guess. Yes, there are good things that have come from social, from the web, and there will be good things that come from the metaverse. Don't get me wrong. But on balance, if we think we've got a problem now with people choosing to discard science and facts when they don't align with what they want to believe, I'm really concerned about what we think is going to happen if we hand them the ability to custom create their own reality that's independent of the real world. You were talking about the importance of getting out there. Well, if I can create an alternate reality that just reflects what I want, and I never have to deal with anything that pisses me off, I'm not sure I'm going to want to get back out there. I'm not sure that as a whole, collectively, we as humanity want to be out there. We want to be, I see the opposite of you. I really do. Believe it's going to deepen tribalism. I don't discount the value that's going to come of it. I just see, on balance, a more dangerous implication of it.
Yeah, but you know what, Christopher? To me, this is all on kind of the same spectrum, because you and I both lived in Boston for a time. I was there for 20 years, and Boston, when I was there, was a 2-newspaper town. You either read the Boston Globe or the Boston Herald, and depending on which one you read, you had a completely different worldview, even depending on which neighborhood you lived in. I lived in South Boston for a long time. There was a lot of baggage that goes along with that and the way people thought. This notion of tribalism and surrounding ourselves and putting our feed in front of us. Now it's a news feed from Facebook, but before it was the feed from the newspapers. It's just along the same continuum. And Meta is just going to do the same. I don't think it's going to do it to a higher degree or a lesser degree. I just think it's a continuation of the same kind of behavior.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Be apologists for government or tech. I think what we need to start doing is being able to look at this and say there's one main source here, our own media literacy. And if we don't start drilling this into education facilities, and by God, did I not see the real lack of it when COVID hit. If you were lucky enough to have your kid even get online learning, what you realized really quickly is these teachers who can hardly handle Google Classroom should probably not be instructing our kids about digital distraction and what digital media literacy is. There's got to be a moment where we stop pointing the finger at Facebook and Google and government and start looking at what are we actually doing to understand our world? What are we doing before we share? What are we doing in terms of what we read and what sources we're reading? Because that really would be, that monkey, that patient zero of the real source of the issue, I think. Now, has that led to an algorithm gone crazy? Absolutely. Is my expectation that Facebook can fix this algorithm with AI? No, I do not have that expectation. This is a real problem that we find ourselves in. But at one point, we're going to have to look a bit closer at ourselves and talk about what our digital media literacy strategy is here.
I don't disagree at all. I just don't. I wish that I believed that people would do that, Mitch. I'm not sure that I've seen anything in the last 15 years or so that indicates to me that as a collective, we will.
Well, for sure. They're not going to wear masks. They're going to do this.
Exactly. Yeah, good point.
Scott, you were saying something. I wasn't sure if you wanted to jump in.
Well, I mean, you look at the average Facebook user, they are not necessarily the most educated bunch. And I think what Mitch is talking about is absolutely critical. This is key to our future. But the number of people that are going to do that, the number of people that are able to do that, very, very small percentage.
And the number of people that want to do that. Scott, I'll even go one further.
Exactly.
Right. So throw the Molotov cocktail and then blame the store that it lands in. That's what we're saying. It's crazy.
So have we decided that Facebook is the enemy or is Facebook the good guy? And are we talking about Facebook?
They're a little bit of both, aren't they always?
Right, exactly.
Yes.
I mean, it's just like there's a little bit of good and a little bit of bad in Facebook. But what about the bigger, larger social community? Will the larger social community, the ability to talk with a large group of people, to have audiences, will all of that improve in a metaverse? In a general sense, obviously Facebook is its own thing and we have our opinions and they're strong about it. But what about the rest of the social spectrum? Will that benefit from a metaverse type play? What do you think, Christopher?
You've asked sort of two separate questions there, Bob. Will the ability to connect with broader groups of people and be exposed to broader sets of perspectives be enhanced by the metaverse? Absolutely, the ability will. I still come back to questioning whether we will choose to take advantage of those opportunities. Like Mitch said, we have the opportunity to wear a mask or get a vaccine, and many of us won't do that. So I question whether, as a collective, again, people are going to go, oh, you know what? It's better for me to get out of my bubble and not talk to people who think and act the way I do,
right, yeah.
and go out and
people
find
I don't
people
like.
let me go find people who don't think what I want to think, and right. I'll talk to them, and then I'll have a better perspective. I don't believe that's going to happen. Call me a curmudgeon and get off my lawn. I own that. Fine, get off my lawn. It's not going to happen.
But also, I think it's fair to recognize that there's no doubt that if this plays out the way it did, and again, many of us here became very familiar with Second Life as a precursor to the metaverse and virtual worlds and immersive experiences. There's no doubt that there's a richness to it from a personal experience that is more than just words and images and even video. And there's something tremendously powerful when you feel like you're actually in a venue with other people. And again, we're acting like there's been nothing to date that's like this when we have a world of Fortnite and Roblox and Minecraft where this has been perpetuating for a very long time in a very, very effective way with real commerciality and real money and currency taking place and exchange and trade taking place within it. So there's a bit of this reality in this virtual reality that we have to acknowledge, which is there's no doubt we're going there. There's no doubt we're moving from screens to environments where it's everywhere, to it being more immersive. Clearly, I mean, the people with the billions and trillions of dollars are pushing us in that direction. We are going to go there. It will be a better experience. It will create more things. But when I say better experience, I don't mean better in terms of how we behave. So the behavioral part is the question mark. And that's where I go back to this. If we want to have a better experience, we can't expect it to be delivered by the people who are building the platform. It has to come from the people. I can give you the nicest house in the world, but if it's not within a community or a family that respects or wants to be thankful for it and make sure that it's maintained and taken care of, we've seen what happens to neighborhoods like that. And again, a lot of those neighborhoods are impacted not just by the people in the community within it, but by what's happened to those people and those communities over time. This is the other factor that we have to look at. When you look at disenfranchised groups, now imagine when all of us are disenfranchised by technology and we're being forced into this other type of community. This is going to start being the real problem. And we have enough examples of this if we just look at disenfranchised groups in our real world to take and learn lessons from.
Well, this has been a healthy debate. Go ahead, Christopher.
That was Scott.
Well, this is Scott. I think that, to kind of paraphrase what Mitch said, whether it's the telephone or social media or the metaverse, the technology fundamentally does not change who we are. It exposes who we are. And until we want to make that decision to become a better people, we're still going to see the same things exposed.
I would go one step further and say it not only exposes, but it amplifies who we really are. And that's the real problem.
Yeah, I agree.
So, well, we've only got time for a few minutes to talk about our last topic. So I want to get to this real quick. Protecting kids, obviously a very good thing. Putting a backdoor into iMessage encryption, maybe not as good. Apparently, Apple has put out an update which allows them, if you followed anything in the tech space on this issue, apparently known child pornography images can be identified through the code, even in encryption. And so they've put a system in place that will identify child pornography being passed through iMessage and will immediately flag it and give that user up to that without, revealing anything that they've been saying or doing or whatever, because that's still protected. They can identify when those images are being shared. So, Scott, obviously this is a good thing for the sake of children, protecting children, but from a standpoint of building in a backdoor into iMessage, this has a lot of privacy advocates really worried about it. And I'm wondering what that does to the long-term Apple stance or long-term Apple position, brand preference, all that stuff. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this is a corporate conundrum. On the one hand, you have a human rights issue. Certainly no one wants to come out as, pro child porn. But at the same time, you have, a fundamental privacy rights issue. And Apple has been extremely careful about how they approach privacy since their early days. It's been sacrosanct. And I think a lot of people feel that by building in this backdoor, the rug has been pulled out from under us, that Apple is going back on a promise. And a backdoor to AI, right, because there are no human eyes that actually see the content on the end user. But building in that backdoor is what opens up the possibility for a larger entity to go in there, like a government body or something else. And I think that's where people are freaking out. Now, I don't know what the right balance is to strike here, how you can actually have both of these things, how you can maintain a commitment to privacy, but also do what's right to prevent child sex trafficking. I think Apple is trying to thread the needle here, and it seems like the way it was announced, the way that it's been rolled out, simply was not going to please those who are privacy advocates, and it's really put them into a corner.
I think everybody's in the corner. This is a really strange predicament. I found myself having to read and reread several articles about it to even not wrap my head around it, to be fully transparent.
Right.
This idea that in some way by Apple allowing this, it can't by definition be end-to-end encryption seems technologically to be not true. And that essentially, if they do this, what they're actually doing is threatening or challenging WhatsApp with their 2 billion users, because they're claiming the end-to-end encryption maintains, even though it's able to, I guess, almost use a straw to pull out this very bad element, which has to be there. And so I found myself asking, is this a moral? Is this illegal? Is this a tech challenge? And I think the answer is it's all of those things. But if we can't really wrap our heads around how, I think the real challenge to me is it felt like I wasn't even sure if I was getting a clear description or a unified description that we all agree on what end-to-end encryption truly means. When I think about it in context of what do I prefer, real secure privacy or safety for children, if that's being put forward as the real definitions here, I'm going to put the children first. And that's, maybe that's just a lesson to me about what I want to communicate through my messaging. If it means that it's less private or more accessible to others in a world that is going to up even a percentage point, the ability for people like that to share information like
but
that. That's my own personal thing.
Let me put a devil's advocate argument out there for us to kind of chew on. If they're able to do this for pornography images that are known pornography images, then it's easy for them to take images or propaganda documents or whatever coming from maybe, say, a dissident group in a country that is highly oppressed. I mean, like say Afghanistan or something like that. I mean, I'm not saying they're technologically adept enough to do this, but they could take this back door of sorts and use this technology in order to identify chatter among dissidents and be able to crack down on people. I mean, it's just like there are.
Have we not heard of Edward Snowden? They're already doing this.
Well, right. I mean, but iMessage, one of the big selling points of it is end-to-end encryption, which really does provide a secure way to talk. I mean, they're not breaking into it. If they were, they wouldn't be coming to Apple all the time asking them to break into it for them. It's just like iMessage is secure. Apple can't even get into it. And by building this back door, they're allowing at least the first inklings of a wedge into that ability, and it's just like
Apple's comment is that it's not doing that, but at the same time the commentary against that is, but if you're doing it for that, what's to lead us to believe that you wouldn't do it for others through government pressure or regulation pressure? And I understand that. But again, at a greater scale, why is this being done and what purpose is it? I think we have to take a step back and recognize the damage that's being created in a way that's unfathomable in terms of child safety. So, it's a tough one, but for me, it's an obvious one. It is that if I have to give up some of that openness and I have to be more careful with what I'm sharing, what I'm doing, or people in general have to find alternative technical methods to transfer messaging that might be dissidents who need information to get out. I understand and I feel for the world that I'm not an anti-privacy person, but I'm just really always going to side with if we can make some kids safe in that type of environment. I mean, this is a terrible situation where you have people who are in their 30s and 40s, some of them I know, who have been victims of child pornography. And this stuff just keeps surfacing. I mean, it'll resurface and resurface. You'll think it's gone. It's whack-a-mole. And they're in their 50s, and this stuff from them when they were kids pops up. I mean, you can't even imagine what that does to your life and the trauma it causes. We have to really stop and think about the type of world we want.
Well, let me take it one more standpoint. Let's pose it as a brand question. Which is more powerful as far as a brand message? The fact that we are protecting kids and that we're making sure that no child pornography is distributed on our network, or is the message that we're possibly breaking the encryption doing that? I mean, which is the more powerful message? Which is the more dominant message that people are going to hear when they get this? My opinion is they're going to hear child pornography, bad thing, get rid of it, and no care in the world about the encryption for most people. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, look at what they're downloading anyways. I want my end-to-end encryption really solid, but I'm going to post pictures of my kids and my entire life on Facebook. Okay.
Right. I mean, everything that's been said is accurate. This is a no-win conversation because you're stuck between two pretty unpalatable positions. You're either defending the ability of child pornographers to share and spread their information, or you're limiting the ability of people, potentially anyway, in repressive governments in trying to get information out and perhaps save lives that way. However, to answer your question, Bob, I side with Mitch. If you have a choice between one or the other, the message of protecting children is going to be not only more resonant with most people, and that's the one that most people are hearing, but probably with a small exception of a very vocal group, it's probably going to be the side that most people are going to come down on. I don't want to say Apple played it safe because that's not fair, but that's a safer position to take, the one that they've taken.
It's also hilarious too that at the end of the day, we're talking about Apple, which has been the one poking in the eyes of those who aren't really embracing privacy, against WhatsApp, which is owned by Facebook. And the answer in a lot of these articles is the more secure solution is to go to WhatsApp, which is owned by Facebook. There's a lot of irony here.
Yes, there is. But with that, it's time for this week's Fair, Fail, Foul. But before, let me say that again, Fair, Fail, Foul. I knew eventually I would trip over that. But before we get to that segment of the show, I do want to take this opportunity to thank my guests again and allow them to each do a shameless plug, starting with Christopher Barger. You can find him at Owen Corning. That's where he is a communications leader. Tell us what's going on in your world, Christopher. What would you like to promote?
Well, first of all, let me paraphrase John F. Kennedy here. I think this may be, on this episode, the most extraordinary collection of talent and knowledge there's ever gathered on the BeanCast, except for when Thomas Jefferson recorded alone. It's been cool to have you guys on and be in a conversation with you. I would love for folks to keep an eye on. We are about to debut. I work in the composites division at Owens Corning, and we are about to, when you go to streaming shows after Thanksgiving, whether it's on Hulu or Prime or your network of choice, there'll be some pre-roll commercials that for the first time really kind of break down what composites are, why they matter, and does it in a very entertaining and very informative way. The campaign is called How We Build Now, and it's probably the first time that I've seen in my time at Owens Corning where we're kind of pulling ourselves out of the science and trying to be really relatable as to why what we do matters. So please keep an eye open for that on streaming services right after the holiday.
Yeah, that sounds really cool. I'll have to definitely check that out. Now, next up, we have Mitch Joel. You can find him at 6pixels.com. That's the home of the 6 Pixels group. It's also where you can find his blogs, you can find his books, you can find his podcasts. He does so many things. So tell us what's going on in your world, Mitch. What would you like to promote?
A lot's going on, but I think that I'm going to volley it over and recommend everybody pre-order the pending book. I believe it comes out in April, called Bittersweet: How Sorrow and Longing Make Us Whole, which is the follow-up. It's the second book by Susan Cain, which many people might know as the author of Quiet, a book about introverts. This is her new book. It's called Bittersweet, and I believe it comes out in early April, so you can pre-order it now. And I'm just going to give her a shout-out because she's an amazing human being, and I think it just looks like another very fascinating look at who we are.
Oh, that's cool. I got a whole bunch of happy faces suddenly coming up on my screen, so I guess everybody else in the panel loved it as well. Last but not least, we go to Scott Monty. You can find him at scottmonty.com. That's the home of Scott Monty Strategies, where he is a consultant, a speaker, and many other things, a podcaster. What do you call a Sherlock Holmes nerd? I'm not really sure how to do that, but you tell us what's going on in your world. What would you like to promote?
Wow. Well, it's hard to follow Mitch, just in general, but certainly after that throw over to Susan Cain there. But I'm going to do my best. So if people wouldn't mind tuning in to the Timeless Leadership Podcast and the Timeless and Timely newsletter, you can find that at timelesstimely.com. We come out 3 times a week. Choose your cadence, and we'll see you on the internet.
And this message has been brought to you by Scott Monty Strategies. All right, I have nothing to say. For more information about me or the show, visit thebeancast.com. There you can find a complete show archive. You can find out how to consult with me. And of course, you can find out how to advertise on this program as well. So check it all out at thebeancast.com. And now it's time for this week's Fair, Fail, Foul, a rundown of the best and worst of advertising, marketing, and public relations from the last week. First up, we've got the fair of the week. Scott, I'm going to give this to Amazon. Amazon has put out a new series called The Wheel of Time on their Amazon Prime network. This series is based on the books by Robert Jordan. It's a very popular, long-running series. And they went and did these 3D billboard installations in London, in New York, I think somewhere else, I forget off the top of my head. But they're really amazing. I mean, did you get a chance to watch that video and see this thing in action?
I did, and it's really jarring. And if this doesn't make people stop and watch and get freaked out, and I hope it doesn't do anything to traffic, right? I hope folks in Piccadilly Circus and in Times Square are paying attention. But boy, I mean, it is some of the best outdoor I've seen in a long time. Yeah,
I mean, I've seen the precursors of this. I've seen like the cat that was in Akihabara Market in Tokyo. I mean, it's just like I've seen previous installations that are really cool, but this is truly outstanding work. So kudos to everybody involved. Now, the fail of the week, Mitch, I'm going to give to Casper. Apparently, everybody loved the Casper company. Casper makes mattresses, and they were great mattresses, and everybody loved them, and everybody talked about them. And suddenly, as we find out, as they tried to do a round of funding and ended up getting acquired, that for I think they were acquired for like $300 million, which sounds like a lot of money, but it's not very much money considering, how much people value them as. You kind of figured out that they have built themselves a great brand, but not a profitable brand. And it kind of makes me wonder how many in the DTC field are kind of floating the same kind of boat. What are your thoughts?
It makes me wonder how many businesses with any form of valuation are able to float their own boat. And again, not to lump it into a fail or fair or foul, but look at Grammarly. This week they raised some money. Grammarly is worth $13-14 billion. A spell checker.
Yeah, right.
So where is our attachment to reality? This is a company that had to build a brand in a very aggressive industry and vertical, in particular because there are so many incumbents there who spend money and who've optimized over decades and decades of building that business. We don't go around willy-nilly buying mattresses. You purchase it and you hold on to it for many, many, many years. It is a tough industry. It's a tough industry to break into when you have so many incumbents. Am I surprised at all? No, I'm really not surprised at all. And I think you're absolutely right. There are many companies that are always operating at a razor thin margin, if that. And the vast majority of businesses don't ever make it out of the gate or don't survive their first 5 years. So there's, again, nothing new here other than a headline that maybe their competitors and or other people in the same boat are just happy that their name wasn't in the headline.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the case.
and let's not forget, Bob, Casper was a friendly ghost.
He was a friendly ghost, and he'll be a ghost for a long time now. Now, foul of the week, I'm going to give to Tesla, Christopher. Tesla ranked dead last in consumer confidence and Consumer Reports recently. Just at the same time, a server outage left many of their cars undrivable. A lot of consumers were complaining that the server outage made it impossible for them to drive the car. So you got to wonder, what is Tesla actually building here? Are they building an idea and a kind of culture, or are they building an actual product? What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, it goes to the point that manufacturing is hard. It's not so easy to take an idea and make it work on a practical level. But what I think is really happening here, is that Tesla is the victim of Elon Musk's own success and his skill as a salesman. He has, whether you believe, and I do, the automotive industry, as did Scott, the industry was going in the direction of electrification, but it would not have happened as quickly if Elon Musk had not been doing what he's doing. He's an outstanding salesman. And when you are that good at selling an idea and that good at making yourself and your brand front and center of attention, then failures, any mistakes are going to be that much more magnified because you've put yourself out there as the solution to all the things you don't like about the automotive industry. So I'm not sure that this is really about Tesla's reliability and more about the fact that Tesla's running into the same thing that the rest of the automotive industry is or does, which is that problems sometimes happen. This is not easy. And people had higher expectations because of Musk's skill. So I don't think it's going to permanently dent Tesla. I think they're going to end up being fine. I just see it as a reflection of Elon's skill as a salesman.
I saw a fantastic trolling tweet over the weekend from Mike Levine, who is the head of truck communications for Ford Motor Company. Somebody had taken Ford to task on its new electric F-150 of having a raised keypad panel on the outside of the truck back in like May. Mike pulled that out and he said, "Hey, we're not having trouble getting into Ford trucks this weekend."
Good point. Well, have a suggestion for this list or just want to discuss it? Comment online. Use the hashtag #FairFailFoul. That's #FairFailFoul. And that does it for this week's show. If you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, visit our website at thebeancast.com and click on the subscribe link. If you're an Apple Podcast listener, we've also provided a direct link to our listing there, or just search for the BeanCast in the podcast directory on the Apple Podcasts app. And whichever podcast directory you use, when you subscribe, please leave us a review. Got a comment? Have a question? We'd love to hear from you. Just send your emails to beancast@gmail.com. Opening theme was performed by Joe Seibel. Closing theme by C. Jax. Thanks for listening. I'm Bob Norp. We'll be back again next week. Actually, we won't be back. We'll be back again 2 weeks from now. And hope you'll join us then.
You know what I mean? It's like if it's, you know what I mean? I don't know, man. Just like, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like totally like that. It's like, I don't know, like if it's, you know, it's like, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's just like kind of, it just seems like it's just like almost exactly